Hey, happy, beautiful, amazing day. Dr. Bob Witkowski here, April 17th of 2020 with a SARS-CoV-2 update. There's a very famous trial a couple thousand years ago where basically the prosecutor asked this question: what is truth? Well, that's a long question that should be pondered. And we might want to ask the question, is our data that we're getting regarding this bug accurate? If it's not accurate, why? And I really want the world to look at that question. So here's our update. We have 2.2 million people infected on the planet, 147,000, almost 148,000 deaths. If that is indeed accurate, the data looks to be embellished, but some people will take the other side of it. They'll say, oh no, we are underreporting. We are underreporting. I'll show you data that says that we're probably not, but it's probably nowhere near 147,000. We get the seasonal flu coming in at about 143,000, HIV coming up on 500,000 people. If we're going to put money into something, why not put it into HIV and malaria? These problems have been around for a long time. Malaria, hundreds of years affecting the human population. HIV, at least 40 years affecting the human population. By the way, 3.8 million deaths due to infectious disease so far this year. You've seen this graph many times. World Health Organization lead researcher. The world appears to have peaked and has fallen in terms of this epidemic. The US has peaked and has fallen. Italy has peaked and has fallen. Looks like Sweden, who did not put the extreme quarantine and economic restrictions in place, has peaked and fallen. UK, I'm not quite sure about that because they had a big spike here, but in other countries, spikes were due to a day where a lot of cases were reported, not necessarily that they happened on that day. They just said, oh, let's report all of these as well. So I was reading, how can we get an accurate count? And one thing that we can do is take the known death rate and then multiply it by the population, take the fraction of the year that we're at, and we can come up with the projected deaths to date. So I just did just that. So with the projected death rate, which is very accurate and has been for decades, we would have had 17,258,000 deaths. How many have we actually had? 17,285,000. And simple math, a little over 26,000 extra deaths above projection. That is what the science says should be the number of deaths due to this epidemic. Now consider that many deaths were likely reclassified as COVID deaths. We'll show you the actual data on that. This is from a world-renowned economist. He looked at US alone because that's where he practices his art of economics. But we have 7 years running of flu death. Notice that the flu this year seems to be profoundly mild. Notice that flu deaths are way down by over 7,100. And he said if those were just the only deaths that were reclassified as COVID, well, then we'd be at 16,000 deaths instead of about 24,000 US. So we'd be down by at least 33%. But what else does he say? He says, we know now that the COVID-19 deaths are likely inflated. There's not many experts that are disputing that. This begs another question. How many deaths from chronic lung disease, from heart disease, from the seasonal flu, from lung cancer, from AIDS, or other similar conditions are being classified as COVID-19? Could it be a lot more than that number? Projections say it could be dramatically inflated. Will Durant, this is a phenomenal book, Lessons of History, possibly the world's greatest historian. I really also like Yuval Noah Harari, phenomenal historian today, but he says history reports that men who can manage men will manage men who can only manage things, but men who manage money manage everything. So are there people with big money influencing the world policy on this and maybe pushing a scheme to try to get more money? Here's what he also said. You can't fool all the people all the time, but you can fool enough of them to rule a large country, right? At least for a period of time. So I want you to put on your thinking hat. I want you to figure out what the truth is, and I want you to speak up if that's what you're led to do. World-renowned immunologist, senior research associate with Rockefeller University, Nuit Witkowski. He says, look, we've already had 2 SARS epidemics, SARS and MERS. They fit this bell-shaped curve. This was SARS. Notice that this was about a 6-month problem. And by the way, Professor Witkowski says this pandemic would be over if we just let it run its course. But here is what could be the most criminal act. What we know now is that when healthy people are exposed to this virus, we beat it. 80% of people will have mild cases, and they will beat it, and they will develop antibodies. These antibodies can be transferred to people that are fighting for their lives. Both Proceed's National Academy of Science and the Journal of American Medical Association show 100% of the time the viruses were cured in 7 days. Now, these are very small populations, right? Very small cases. But here's what we know. This reference says anybody who has recovered from COVID can donate. Not necessarily true, right? If you have something else like HIV or hepatitis, probably don't donate. Winston Churchill was in the world a great leader at the time that some very twisted special interest groups were trying to take over. By the way, among educated people, this is a strong sentiment that we may have people that have very twisted mindset trying to force their agenda. But here's what Churchill said. Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. So speak the truth. But how are you going to find the truth? Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. Listen to people you respect. Listen to people that you admire. Listen to people that are not tainted by the dollar. And listen to your heart. Listen to the wisdom of the universe and come to the conclusion of what truth is and share it with the world. I'm Dr. Bob Witkowski, absolutely knowing that we can all be happy, healthy, and successful.